Imagine waking up tomorrow to find petrol prices rising, flight tickets becoming more expensive, and stock markets falling across the globe. It may seem like a conflict happening far away, but developments in the Middle East can directly affect the global economy and eventually your daily life. And just when tensions appear to be easing, they have flared up once again. Well, fresh US military strikes on Iran, followed by US President Donald Trump's statement that the ceasefire is over, have sparked fresh concerns of a wider conflict. And within hours, oil prices surged, stock markets turned volatile, and investors rushed to safer assets. So what exactly is happening and why is the world so concerned? Well, let us understand about it. What triggered the latest crisis? Notably, the latest escalation began after the US carried out military strikes on Iran following attacks on commercial ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Washington blamed Iran for the attacks, although Tehran has not officially accepted responsibility. And soon after, President Donald Trump declared that the ceasefire was over and dismissed the possibility of further negotiations. The US also entered a temporary waiver that had allowed Iran to continue exporting oil, increasing pressure on Tehran and raising fears that the conflict could escalate further. But why are the oil prices rising? Oil prices react quickly whenever there is uncertainty about global supplies. Following the latest developments, Brent crude climbed above $76 a barrel and later touched around $78, while US benchmark WTI crude rose nearly 6%. And the reason is simple, that if investors believe that conflict could disrupt oil production or transportation, they expect supplies to tighten. And even the possibility of shortages is enough to push prices higher. So why is the Strait of Hormuz so important? Well, a major reason behind the market reaction is the Strait of Hormuz, and this narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf with the Arabian Sea and carries millions of barrels of crude oil every day. Major producers such as Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait and Iran rely on this route to export oil. And if shipping through the strait is disrupted, global oil supplies could be affected almost immediately. And that is why every military development in the region is closely watched by governments and financial markets. So how are global markets reacting? Well, rising oil prices increases transportation and manufacturing costs, creating uncertainty for businesses and investors. And as a result, stock markets across Asia, Europe and the US have witnessed sharp swings. Many investors have shifted their money into the safer assets, while energy companies have benefited from higher crude prices. Markets are now closely tracking every new development in the Middle East, as any escalating could further impact global trade and economic growth. Well, how could this affect India? Well, for countries like India, the situation is particularly important because the country imports most of its crude oil. And if international oil prices remain high, petrol and diesel prices could also increase. Higher fuel costs can also raise transportation expenses, making everyday goods, food and other essentials more expensive. Persistent inflation could also make it harder for the Reserve Bank of India and the other central banks to reduce interest rates, potentially slowing economic growth. So what could happen next? Well, experts say that everything now depends on two key factors: whether the conflict between the US and Iran escalates further and whether the Strait of Hormuz remains open for commercial shipping. And if diplomacy resumes and oil supplies remain uninterrupted, prices could stabilize. However, if attacks continue or shipping is disrupted, oil prices could stay elevated for weeks or even months. So what is the bottom line? Well, the latest rise in oil prices is about much more than a military strike. It reflects growing fears that tensions between the US and Iran could threaten one of the world's most important oil supply routes. And with President Donald Trump declaring that the ceasefire is over and uncertainty surrounding the Strait of Hormuz continuing, global markets remain on edge. And for now, governments, investors and consumers will be watching every development closely, because in today's interconnected world, events unfolding in the Middle East can influence fuel prices, inflation, stock markets and the cost of living across the globe. That's all for now. Stay tuned to the Savera for more updates. Do like, comment and subscribe to the channel.